Today, we'll see how much we get through, maybe even next week, we will talk about some issues related to everyone, all the Ashkenazim's favorite topic, which is Kitniyos. So what I want, Kitniyos, whatever you want to call it. So we can, hopefully we'll talk about, I wanted to address 3 questions today, so we're certainly not going to get to everything. But before we address some of these questions, let's just talk about the origin of the custom. So if you look in the Gemara says they can only fulfill the mitzvah of matzah with a type of grain which can also become chametz. And the Gemara then lists 5 different types of grain which you can fulfill the mitzvah of matzah, and again which can become chametz and violate the prohibition of owning chametz on Pesach, which are chita, seora, shifon, shibolet, shual, and kusmin, which traditionally are wheat, barley, rye, oats, and spelt. There's some, I think, botanist or somebody in that academic field who tried to prove, I think, that shibolet, shual can't mean oats. They wanted to say it means something else, Professor Felix. But I don't think that's accepted by, halakhically, I don't think anybody will go as far as to bring in another one of the grains to say you can fulfill the mitzvah, and again, which can become chametz. Now, already in the Gemara, there's an opinion, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who wouldn't eat rice on Pesach, because he thought rice could become chametz. So again, he thought, I guess you can fulfill the mitzvah of matzah with rice, and he also wouldn't eat it because he thought it could become chametz. However, later, that's I think in Lamed Hey in Pesachim, but later on in Pesachim, there's a story where it's clear that I think Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is rejected, and that you can eat rice on chametz. I think there was a story that one of the Amoraim ate rice on Pesach, maybe at the Seder. And so therefore, from the din of the Gemara, it's clear that there are only 5 types of grains which can become chametz, and again, which you can fulfill the mitzvah of matzah. So then, how do we move beyond that? So then, how is it that we have this custom not to eat kitniyos? Now, first of all, what are kitniyos? So I guess depending on what list you look at, you'll get different.
Well, it depends who you are too.
Depends who you are, but generally some of the common ones are rice, peas, beans, anything in the legume family, which I don't know what exactly.
Beans and
those are all under the legumes.
Peanuts.
We'll get to peanuts later. Alfalfa, mustard, millets. There's a whole corn. Correct. There's a whole list. So why is it? How did this custom become that we don't eat all these types of grains on Pesach, if it's clear from the Gemara that there's no concern of chametz whatsoever? And nobody believes that there's a concern of chametz when it comes to Kitniyos. So where's the origin of this custom? So the first place where it appears in, I think, rabbinic literature is what we have here in source number 1, which is from the Smak, the Sefer Mitzvos Katan, which was written by the Mahari Corville in the 14th, I think the 14th century. So there was an article I found online by Rabbi Jachter who translated the piece into English, so I just quoted the English so we can read what he writes. So what is it? Why do we have this custom not to eat all these other types of food if it's clear that they're not chametz? So regarding kitniyos such as rice and beans, our rabbis have the practice not to eat them on Pesach. I believe that I have heard that one should not cook them on Pesach besides in boiling water from the moment they are placed in the pot. So what he just wrote, and if you look in the bracket, this is what the Gemara calls chalita. The Gemara says regarding chametz itself even, that even though normally if you put water with, let's say, wheat flour, then it will ferment and it will turn into chametz. If you put it directly into boiling water, I think that prevents the fermentation, and therefore it wouldn't become chametz. So according to the Gemara,
it wouldn't, or it would become?
It would not become. That prevents it. I think putting it in hot water, eventually exposing it to heat can become chametz, but I think putting it in hot water right from the beginning, if you put it straight into boiling water, I think that prevents the food from becoming chametz.
But isn't then the question with people that don't eat kabrach the same sort of, or is that completely a different type of thing?
What do you mean?
Because they won't put matzah inside water.
But that's any liquid. Yeah, but again, cold's going to be more problematic than hot.
Okay.
That's what he's saying,
okay.
And that's only really an aside. I think practically now we don't actually believe that we can do chalita in the proper way, so we avoid that as well. But let's just say, so many great rabbis are lenient concerning this issue. But it appears very difficult to permit something when the common practice to be strict dates back to the early ages. So he's writing in the 14th century, and the 14th century, maybe the 13th century, and he's already saying that this is already a well-established practice. It is reasonable to say that this stringency did not emerge as a concern for Kitniyot being actual chametz. So nobody actually believes that Kitniyot could be chametz. Why? Because they would not err on matters familiar even to the youngest of students. And the Gemara explicitly states that only the 5 species of grain have the potential to become chametz. So nobody actually thinks that Kitniyot are chametz. That is not true. So why are they strict? Rather, the reason is an edict to prevent violation of Torah law, since Kitniyot are cooked in a manner similar to the way that grains are cooked. Had we permitted Kitniyot, one could have easily become confused with chametz, because they are cooked similarly. In addition, in many locales, Kitniyot are made into bread, and people who are not well versed in Torah laws might have become confused. This is not at all similar to vegetables, which are clearly distinguishable from the 5 grains. It is a proper minhag to refrain from eating all Kitniyot, including mustard seed, because of their similarity to grain. Although the Talmud specifically permits rice, this rule applied only in Talmudic times when all were well versed in halacha. However, today we should certainly follow the decree that we mentioned. So the Smak thinks the origin and the custom began because it was too similar to chametz. And it become too similar. He mentions 2 ways, and it can become similar in certain ways. A, they might look similar. They might look like they're similar types of grain. B, you can grind them both into flour and make bread into them. And a third thing which he doesn't mention here, which I think others mention, is also that when you harvest them from the field, the Gemara calls it midit and midgan. I think they're both types of grain food which you put into piles before bringing them, I guess, into the house. For all these different reasons, because they're so similar to each other, we're concerned that if you're going to start using all these Kitniyot products, and you're going to start using chametz, and if you're going to bake with Kitniyot, you're going to bake with chametz, etc. So to avoid any confusion, they said the custom began not to eat these types of food on Pesach. That's one approach given. The other reason, which is added on, which the Torah mentions, which maybe perhaps is a bit of a later reason, is there's also a concern that they are mixed together. That because they look similar or not, they grow in fields adjacent to each other. So a secondary concern arose that even if you're going to have these grains, so we're not concerned with rice, but we're concerned that there may be pieces of wheat that are mixed together with the rice, and therefore if you're going to cook that on Pesach, or even before, you're going to create chametz. That's a secondary concern. A third concern which I saw, I don't remember who quotes it, says the reason why it's forbidden is because they're actually they're not such great foods, everything falling under Kitniyot, and therefore it's not appropriate to eat them on Yontiv. It doesn't allow you to have proper Simchas Yontiv. Now I think if you ask more people nowadays what will increase their Simchas Yontiv, I think they'll say, well, eating Kitniyos will certainly allow that. And I think that reason is not, halakhically, not really, because then there should be no difference in Pesach and all the other Chagim as well. So that clearly was, I don't think that's the reason that's accepted, but that was another reason thrown out there.
He obviously never had shulant, right?
So certainly the first 2 are really the main concerns. The main concerns we have are that there might be actual chametz mixed into these other types of food, or even if there's not actual chametz mixed in, they look too similar to each other. And because in whatever, either in the process that they're made, what they're made into, that we're concerned you're going to start cooking with one. And again, he said that's what the Shmak concluded with. In the times of the Gemara, everyone knew the distinctions, and therefore we weren't concerned about rice. But now people don't know the distinctions. So you're cooking with rice, so say, okay, I can cook with wheat as well. So those really are the origins of the custom. And if you look in source number 2, which obviously now, which leads us again, what countries was this in? These are in did he even mention that? But the assumption obviously is that this is an Ashkenazi custom and generally not a Sephardic custom. If you look in Shulchan Aruch, source number 2, Elu devarim sheyotzim bahem yedei chovas matzah. These are the following grains which you can use to fulfill the mitzvah of matzah. Bechitin u'seorim u'kusmin shibolet shuval v'shifon. And then in the Maharil adds in, the Rama, I think majority of people do use wheat for their matzah. Now, because of celiac, etc., I think spelt has become a bit more popular. I don't know of any, but what?
Rye matzah too.
So there's everything. It's probably not barley. I'm assuming there's not barley.
No, I know there's definitely. I don't know if is there oat matzah already? Yeah, but there's definitely rye matzah.
Okay, so everything now. Most people, I think, eat wheat, but you certainly have these other
wheat also.
Yeah, so whatever. I don't even know what they have now. Aval, he says, lo be'orez ushar mine kitniyos, but you can't use orez, you can't use rice and all other types of legumes. V'gam einam ba'im lidei chimutz, and these orez and kitniyos don't actually become chametz. So mutar lasos be'em tafshon, you can actually eat them on yantiv. Again, this is the Shulchan Aruch. The Rama adds in v'yesh osrim, but there are those who say it's prohibited. V'haminhag Ashkenaz lahachmir ve'in l'shanos, and the minhag is to be strict, and we don't make any distinctions. Now, how far do we go? Do we treat it exactly like chametz? So the Rama continues, and the answer is obviously no. Miu pashut de'in osrim b'di'evad im naflu tocha tafshio. If it falls into a mixture of other food, then it is clear that b'di'evad, that if it happened after the fact, that it is not prohibited. If chametz fell into a mixture on Pesach itself, we have a rule: chametz is not batel. That generally we say shishim is enough, but chametz, if on Pesach itself it falls into a mixture, it is not batel. If it happens before Pesach, then it is batel b'shishim. On Pesach itself, it's not batel. But when it comes to Kitniyos, that's not true. If it falls in, it's batel, and most no. So most poskim believe it's not even batel b'shishim; it's actually batel b'rov. As long as the majority of the mixture is not kinyan, then you're okay. And v'chein mutar lahadlik b'shmanim hanasi mehem. You can also light oils made from kitniyot. So what's that leniency for chametz? Chametz not only cannot eat chametz, not to benefit from chametz. That's not the rule for kitniyot. Kitniyot, we see here you're allowed to benefit from them, which obviously also means not to own them. Chametz you can't own. Kitniyot you can also own. So those are major distinctions between them. You can own kitniyot, you can own them, you can benefit from them, and even if it falls into a mixture, we can apply the rules of bittul. Okay, so that is how the Rama quotes this halacha. So he quotes the stringency on the one hand that we don't eat them, but then quotes some of the leniencies that we have when it comes to Kitniyos as well. Now, even for Sephardim, even some communities within the Sephardic community have adopted some of the stringencies of Kitniyot. For example, Moroccans do not
eat any. Depends which ones, but most of them
don't eat. For sure, they don't eat rice, and I think
corn,
they don't eat many of them. And because even in the Sephardic community, they talk about these stories where, and even the ones who do eat them, they are required to check them numerous times before Pesach because of the concern that maybe they grow near other types of fields and they're going to have wheat mixed in with them or other 5 grains.
The only thing that Sephardim tend to do as a general whole is they'll eat egg matzah.
That's a separate question.
I know, but
matzah shira. Yeah, that's matzah shira.
In terms of
So depending on the Sephardic community, you'll have varying customs in terms of what they eat. The best custom that I saw written is that somebody wrote that their friend was from, I think, an Iraqi community, and they didn't eat hummus, which we also don't eat. Why not? Nothing to do with kitniyos or any concern, because it sounds like chametz. I found really interesting. Okay. So now that's just some of the background when it comes to Kitniyos. So then I want to address here, hopefully, 3 separate questions. The first one being, we just said how Kitniyos is much more lenient than chametz. You can own it, you can benefit from it, the rules of bittul, but is it possible that it's more stringent? And what that means is, we know that even though we don't eat, we don't have chametz, but we do have matzah and all these other foods which come from wheat and all these other types of grains. Can we have matzah made from kitniyot? Now, obviously, you can't fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah the first night through eating matzah made from kitniyot, but can you make it all together? Anyone knows? And have you ever seen matzah made from kitniyot on the market? Like corn matzah or
like rice crackers?
Yeah. but like made with the same stringencies as matzah. Meaning you can't. Again, we said you can't cook them. But let's say you make rice flour and then you cook it with the same stringencies you have when it comes to matzah. You can eat matzah. That's all. You can't eat any wheat. We fulfill a mitzvah with it. So can you make corn matzah? Can you make rice matzah? Can you make any of these types of food? I've never seen any of these on the market. So this is a machlokes. The Shulchan Aruch Harav, who is the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, so he writes in source number 3, Afilu b'mine kitniyos lo nagu ela iser achila. They're only prohibited to be eaten. Im naflu alehem mayim be'inyan shekayote bazeh behem mine dagan aser meikar hadin. So it's only prohibited to eat. Kitniyos is not going to be more stringent than the 5 grains that we have. So the same way, the 5 grains obviously can become chametz, and the stakes are much higher, but provided you take, precaution and you make them in the proper way, which prevents chametz, i.e., making matzah, that's allowed. There should be no difference using, being able to make corn flour, and then making all the stringencies of matzah, and then having corn matzah or rice matzah or any, and that would certainly solve the crisis of what to eat on Erev Pesach. Can't eat matzah, you can't eat this, you can't eat that. So here you go, you have corn matzah. You clearly can't fulfill the mitzvah that night of eating corn matzah, so you're not going to run into that problem, and it should be totally permitted.
But if you're going to have the stringency of like the matzah, like the 18 minutes, etc., does that make any sense? Why don't you just make it into cornbread?
No, because if you start making it into bread, then we're concerned that you're going to start making mistakes and confusing it with the other.
Oh, I see. So it's just that you want to bake it in the same manner.
Yeah, meaning why should it be worse off than wheat, right? If wheat you can make into matzah. So that's one approach. The approach which argues is source number 4. The Shoot Shol Umeshiv is Rabbi Yosef Shaul Nathanson. He lived in the 19th century. So he's dealing with this question. He's when it comes to the whole argument with machine matzah, when it started, he was very involved in that whole debate.
Pro or con?
He was pro. He was on the side allowing it. So Shushol Meshiv writes, the yesh les or af la'afos mine kitnios. We have to prohibit baking types of kitniyos. Dahainu kemach mi kakriza. I don't know what grain that is. Mishum deshema yitu ha'olam v'yatzu behem yidei chovas matzah. What's the concern? It's true. You should be allowed to bake this corn flour into matzah with all the stringencies of matzah, but we're concerned that people aren't going to know to distinguish between the corn matzah and the other matzah, and they're going to start eating corn matzah the Seder night. V'zeh havi gzeira krova. And he says that this isn't so far-fetched. They're not going to understand at all. They're going to say matzah on it, and they'll say, matzah, I can fulfill my mitzvah with this.
You're not giving people much credit.
No. V'adarabba, choshev shekol she'ein lachush mishum chametz yoseroi latis boidei matzah. And they're going to think it's even better. They're going to say, well, corn can't become chametz, so that's even a better way to fulfill the mitzvah. Let me use this type, which there's no concern of chametz. That'll be the best way to fulfill my mitzvah. It says, V'nei gaon echad kasa b'sifro lahatir la'afos mine kitniyos. And there was one rabbi who permitted to bake kitniyos. Dahainu, again, ratzki v'kakriza. Aval eno kidai v'hagun lazeh shiatir davar. But we should not permit something she'avosenu v'avos avosenu nagu ister. That which our forefathers prohibited. V'adarabba b'mashe ofim yoser yesh lachush lachlufei. So he bases his reason, the truth is the sentence before he's talking about, that's one of the reasons why Ashkenazim don't eat, let's say, egg matzah. Same way you can't fulfill your mitzvah, we're concerned if you have egg matzah, you're going to start eating that Seder night. So too, then he continues with the Kitniyos matzah as well. He says, no, don't make matzah from Kitniyos. Why? Because you're going to start eating it for the matzah Seder night, which is a mitzvah, and you're not going to fulfill the mitzvah, and that will not be very good, so better not to bake it altogether. I looked in.
Why don't we usher egg matzahs? Totally. I'm not saying that we should just usher the baking of egg matzahs, period.
So for Ashkenazim.
For the same reason. Shouldn't be on the market. It doesn't say on the box, not permitted for Ashkenazim. It says only for children or sick people.
No, it says not permitted for Ashkenazim.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Okay,
egg
so-
matzah?
Only for sick or...
On egg matzah?
Okay, so
100%.
okay, I don't know.
100%.
It could be that
It
they're
says for
different
the
bread.
Sephardic community, Ashkenazim shouldn't eat it. It's 100%.
Well, the truth is, it matters. So,
Maybe 50%.
No, 100%.
so this is something I didn't mention with Kitniyos, and the same svar applies to matzah shira. I didn't mention this Kitniyos, which is that we have more leniencies when it comes to Kitniyos, and that is in Shas Chak, if there's nothing else to eat, then you can eat Kitniyos. There were many examples in the 17th, 18th centuries when there were famines in Europe. And when they had these famines, so there were often discussions, but the rabbis often permitted the communities to eat Kitniyos in such a situation, because the rabbis never decreed in such urgent situations not to eat Kitniyos. Actually, saw in the Aruch HaShulchan, who was writing at the end of the 18th century, I guess once potatoes became more widespread, he actually said, we actually don't need to permit ever Kitniyos again, because now everyone can just eat potatoes, which is probably kind of true. But that's one issue. And also, fitting the same is a chola. Can a chola eat Kitniyos? And the answer generally is yes, that a chola can eat Kitniyos, and fall into the category, I think, maybe because I'm younger, so where that comes up most is for babies. Where that comes up the most, we often treat babies as the status of a chola, and baby formula is very often Kitniyos, and babies are allowed to eat. Even Ashkenazim, babies can have formula on Pesach. We're not going to say the baby can't eat Kitniyos. So happens to be, I think Matzah Shira has some of those same leniencies, that for the sick and for the elderly, it's based on this idea that they don't eat them, but in those more dire situations, we allow it. So I looked actually, based on this question, can you eat, so again, I don't think it's on the market, so I haven't seen anybody put out korban matzah, so I'm assuming nowadays the custom is not to eat them, but Rav Melamed, who's now putting out all these very popular svarim in Israel, called Pninei Halacha, very popular, and they're starting to be translated into English as well. He thinks, and he wrote here, he thinks the majority of opinion is actually to permit baking korban matzah, etc. In the Moadim B'Halacha, which is Rav Zevin's book, he has a whole chapter on Kitniyos. He also mentions many Rav Chasam Sofer and others who permitted baking matzah from corn, etc. But I guess the kashrus agencies nowadays probably don't allow it. They don't do it. Maybe there's no market for it.
I don't think there's a market.
It could be there's no market. Whatever the reason is, whatever the reason is, I don't think you find that nowadays. So can it be more strict? So we saw perhaps, according to one opinion, it can be, again, because of the concern that you're going to use it for matzah. Now the second question I want to deal with is, are peanuts kitniyah, which ultimately is similar to the question, is quinoa. Now, for everyone who davens here, Rabbi Korobkin very, very often has stated that quinoa is okay, but it's going to be essentially the same issue. So what does Rav Moshe Feinstein write regarding peanuts? So he writes, "Hinei bedavar hapinat shekasavti shebahar mimekomos achlu osam bepesach." So many people ate peanuts on Pesach. And the person asking the question, Tama betam hadavar, mishum sheshamak zihar sheosin mimenu be'eze makom gam kemach. He heard, well, people made peanut flour. Begam shamash and Israel besados kishar kitniyos, and it was also planted in fields like all other kitniyos, maybe next to the other ones. It looks similar again.
It doesn't look similar.
No, that's good. But so perhaps what they're concerned about is that maybe it's into adjacent fields.
What?
But yeah, maybe it's the idea. I wonder if it's true that for sure. I would say it looks different. Maybe he's also referring to the fact that maybe when they harvest it, they put them into piles. I don't exactly know what he's referring to here. But he knows that's not really a good argument to say it's prohibited. Why? Because we don't say that anything which is turned into flour we don't eat on Pesach. Why? There's nothing flour. I mean, potatoes is something which they can make flour from. Lo rak b'mdina elegam b'Europe. So he was obviously in America when he wrote this. Not only in America, but also in Europe. B'mkonosenu v'gam b'doros hakodmim. People always made potato flour. Now, there was a discussion at some point. There were some rabbis who wanted to say that potatoes should be kitniyos, but that obviously was not accepted. So we just see that it's not that every time you can turn something into flour, now it's going to fall under this heading of kitniyos, and therefore it's forbidden to eat. That's not the case. And he says, and even the fact that we're concerned that you're going to have again, wheat mixed in with him. Shekasaf hatur nami eno klal. That's not relevant. Shekol haminim sheishlachus demine chitim u'seorim sheisarvu nagu leser. We also see that just because something you might have wheat and barley mixed into it, that's also not a reason to say you can't eat that altogether. Now, that might be a reason to check it carefully before you actually go ahead and eat them, but it doesn't mean that every type of legume, whatever it is, that is in adjacent field that might be mixed in, we have to be concerned about.
Is there any rabbinic discussion of the 5 prohibited types of food that is produced to a common element?
Meaning, is there
like a particular stock that's within that particular group?
So I only know as follows. I know that the Gemara says that those 5 become chimutz, and everything else, when mixed with water, what they call sirchon, which I think it spoils almost. I didn't read the article. I know somebody wrote an article describing what does spoil mean, and maybe he's also described what chimutz means. I didn't read the article, but that would be the only place where maybe he would quote some sources talking about what. So it seems like these 5 grains turn into chimutz, and everything else turns into is what you'll call sirchon, spoils. But beyond that, a common, I don't know. I haven't seen any.
So if it comes down into being spoiled, then it's a negative, and it's not identifying a positive characteristic.
Well,
then it becomes hard to make.
The only positive thing would be bali de chimutz, but I don't know. I know, is it only these 5 that turn into that you could say, leaven and ferment, and other ones? That I don't know. What Ramosh Weinstein is saying, again, we said the real 2 reasons for Kitniyos. One was there might be wheat mixed in, and 2, you could turn it to flour, look similar. So just because something falls into that category doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be prohibited. So he writes here, let's just skip to the 3rd paragraph, because here's, I think, where certainly his view of how this whole custom started is very important for determining what should be included. He writes, V'gam yesh li tein tam, didin ma shenesar b'minhag ha, ein zeh davar hanesar b'kibbutz chachamim. The way this whole custom began, it wasn't that a group of rabbis sat at a table and decided, well, these are similar, and now we're going to send out a letter to the community, you're not allowed to eat them. That's not what happened. Ela shehinhigu es ha'am lahachmir shelo lechol minim elu shehaya matzui la'ochlam mipnei hatahamim. I think it was more that I think it seemed to be more of a people-driven type of custom. Although he says hinhigu esam, which also means that they directed the nation. Mm-hmm. But what it was is that they decided themselves as a custom, not because it was forbidden, not because they put out any letter stating it's asur. The custom was, they stopped eating them, again, because of these reasons. Because they were concerned that, again, the grains would be mixed in, shekasha livdok, and also because they turn them into flour. But since the rabbis never sat down and issued a formal ruling that you can't eat these foods which have other things mixed in, but it was only this custom. Lo nesru ela haminim shehinigu. It's only going to be prohibited that which the custom was not to eat. Below shar minim, but if they never had a custom not to eat the food, then it's okay. Right? It's not that you need a custom to eat the food, it's you need to have a custom not to eat a specific food. When it came to potatoes, I guess potatoes weren't really a common food in the 14th century. Kayadua, below hinigu, so they never had the custom not to eat it. It doesn't fall under the category, it's not prohibited. The elu minim shenagu lesor. Af sheish oso tamamish, dein lemilaf minag lesor, gam davar shelo nagu lesor. Uchshanisrabu tapuche adama v'dinosenu, when potatoes became very prevalent. Lo ratu chachmei ador lahanig losran. The rabbis didn't want to come and say it's prohibited to eat potatoes. Ulai mipnei atzorech. Again, maybe because you had these situations where there were famines, and it'd be much better to just eat potatoes. Ulai mipnei tamim klushim. Maybe because people didn't like this whole institution of Kitniyos to begin with, so they didn't want to add on to it. The Rabbi Yaakov Emdin, right, his father's the Chacham Tzvi. Everyone knows Chacham Tzvi because he talks about the one day Yontiv in Israel. The Chacham Tzvi, he quotes his father saying how like he wanted to do everything in his power to try to get rid of this minhag of Kitniyos. He thought it was like the worst thing. We have to try to get rid of it. So there was rabbinic support for this idea that they didn't think it was a good custom. They wanted to get rid of it. So certainly they didn't want to add on. So he writes, "V'makam shaleka minhag ein lasor." And so if you have a place where the minhag is not to eat them, ki b'dvarim ke'elu ein lahachmir. U'la'elu sheyesh lahem minhag b'yichud shelo lechol peanut. So if your custom is not to eat peanuts, so aser gab peanut. Aval misafek ein lasor. If you have a safek, you don't know what your custom is. So he says there should be no reason to say it's prohibited. So where Moshe Feinstein seems to, I think, is saying is that it depends on what is the custom. What are the people's custom? Is it not? If the custom is not to eat that food, so don't eat it. If there's no custom, you don't know what your custom is, then you could eat it. Now, I think why that changes dramatically, perhaps in 2014 or 15, is because now I feel like what are people going to eat? People are going to eat whatever has a hechsher on it. So it's not really it's more the kashrus agencies driving. What the minhag I think ultimately is going to be. So if you look in, I was reading through Kor's. Everyone see that they came out with their Pesah magazine this year. So Kor, in their magazine they write that peanuts have the status of Kitniyos. What that means is that they're not going to certify they're not going to certify it, and then people aren't going to eat it. And then ultimately we're going to have this. Ultimately I think we have. Does anyone here have peanuts on Pesach? No, because the conscious agency is essentially.
At one time in Toronto.
Yeah. Peanut
oil was used.
Exactly.
Okay.
I had an OU on it when we were growing up.
Okay. So oil is going to be something we can't talk about maybe next week.
No, but we're still. I know, I understand. But it's being, like you said, it's being changed, like the Diet Coke and other various, that the community now has no control of it. Over it. Well,
so that's why I feel like you can say this debate over quinoa, like that's almost what's being fought out now. And the truth is, when I looked in Kor's. I generally think Kor says it's Kitniyos, but I looked in their magazine. They said here are common foods which are Kitniyos, and they didn't actually include quinoa. So maybe they're trying to.
You came out last year.
So maybe they're. I don't know if they're head. I don't know. I can call them. I can ask them.
But Toronto's the only place, or COR is the only one that gives out that doesn't let you have Diet Coke, or like forbids it.
Well,
no, I don't think it's the only place, but it's one.
It's the only place.
Well, the OU does. MK also started.
MK?
They followed suit.
Really?
Yeah,
Look at the Diet Coke. It says Ochlay Kitniyos.
What with the MK?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that was a change then. Because
I don't
The OU doesn't have.
OU doesn't.
I think the OU says no. Again, I don't know if there are differences between the U.S. and Canadian production. Now that might also factor.
Aspartame is aspartame.
No, but they're different. It could be that's it, but I know Cokes in different countries are made with slightly.
No, the syrup is the same. Syrup is the same.
Whatever it is.
I think in Israel also it's not.
It's not at all. No.
Okay, so you have. But that's you could say the battle going over quinoa is the same idea. Again, like if all the countries ate chicken say you can't eat it, and then you can't, then that will become the custom. But if you have these rabbis saying you can, in certain situations, and that's.
But Rabbi Talmud said you can drink. Rabbi Brisbane said you can drink it. All the rabbis said the Diet Coke. Yeah, everybody.
So the Diet Coke is going to be a separate issue because that also is getting into what I mentioned peanut oil. That is oils. Oils in general might be more lenient because that's a whole.
They're making it stringent, not lenient.
Correct. I understand that. So that's so this was the discussion over Kitniyos. So I think most people. I had a rabbi in Yeshiva who grew up in the States and then made Aliyah to Israel. So he, I guess, decided, when it came time, he was really excited. The first Pesach or whatever it was, at some point he was in Israel, and he decided, the custom here is to eat peanuts, and there's no custom not to eat peanuts. So he decided, the first day of Pesach, after the Seder, after davening the next day, he was going to go eat his bag of peanuts. So he said he was all excited, had it ready, and he had his meal, and then he's about to crack open his peanuts. He said he started to shake. He said he couldn't do it at the end, so he couldn't come to eat his peanuts. But so I think most people here. But again, it's more also the principle he's setting out depends what the custom. If the custom is not to eat it, then you can't eat it. If if you have a safek, if there's no custom, if it's a new food, then based on this approach itself, it would seem like quinoa, which is a new food, should be permitted. Now again, the same concern. One of the big concerns is that you have other grains mixed in, and then you have to check it, and then there are these concerns that come up as well.
I remember growing up in Brooklyn in the early 1950s. Both sides of a street were completely filled with boys playing with filberts and walnuts. I don't know if it was up here too, but it was unbelievable. I guess my question is, if you have one minhag is to use filberts and walnuts, how does that impact on another possible minhag to use peanuts?
Because peanuts aren't a nut.
Say that again?
Peanuts aren't nuts.
The other ones are tree nuts.
Peanuts are a legume. It's a bean. It's a member of the bean family.
That's when we say a minhag.
Yeah.
Are we talking about a family minhag or a community minhag? So, for instance, let's say someone's a Baal Tshuva.
Yeah.
And says, I don't have a family minhag, so now I can eat peanuts. I can adopt my own minhag.
So I'm also basing myself on the story that Rabbi told me. I would assume that it's based. That's a question with minhag in general. Is it more community driven or family driven? I would say in this, I don't know. I don't know. I'm inclined to say that it's community driven in this case, but I'm not.
Because I think in Israel the Russians hold, even though they're Ashkenazim, that the ones that are become from, that they eat kitniyos. I don't think it's a question for like Russian Jews.
So I don't. So that's a good question. Is it? Because that's the whole question of, what's the status of America? Now, generally, America has just adopted European, all the European customs, generally Ashkenazim, because that's who's come over. That's a good question. I don't want to give a certain answer on that. My feeling is that, you also want to stay part of the community as well, so maybe it's both. Maybe both are playing in, but I'm not, I want to say I'm not entirely sure. Okay, so the last question I want to, we're running out of time. Last question I want to address is, so we can Ashkenazim eat at Sephardic homes? Now what is the problem? Now the problem is, so Sephardim, assuming they say they eat kitniyos, so we don't. So even if they're not serving any dishes which have kitniyos, which is okay, that's fine. You can tell them in advance. The utensils that they're using, they have used for kitniyos. So essentially, what is the status of those utensils? Can you, because in general, in general, you're not allowed to. If you believe it's not kosher, again, that might be too extreme, but if you believe it's not kosher, then that will affect all the food that is cooked in those utensils, and Ashkenazim shouldn't be able to eat any food in their homes. So the Rav Ovadia actually is a tshuva on this. It's interesting because Rav Ovadia is generally addressing Sephardim. Here he's actually writing a tshuva addressing Ashkenazim. Can, Achenu Ashkenazim, eat with the Sephardim. So we're very short on time. So just to sum up, there are three opinions on the matter. I'll start with the more stringent. The most stringent, which is not on the sheet, is that they can only eat at their homes if they are using separate utensils. Meaning they cannot cook food for you in the utensils which they're using to cook their kitniyot. Where this is quoted also, again, I mentioned before the baby formula. So very often people are told to use different bottles. Use a different bottle for the baby formula because it's kitniyot, so you don't want to use the same. So have a special bottle for it, and don't use that with other types of food. The middle approach is in source number 7 is the Kaf HaChaim. The middle approach is you should wait 24 hours because there's halachic status is after 24 hours we say that any food inside of a utensil gives off gives off bad taste. It doesn't enhance the taste, doesn't give off a good taste to the food cooked inside. So as long as you've waited 24 hours from the last time they've cooked kitniyot, hot food, again it's only going to be a problem if it's hot. So the last time, if it's been 24 hours from when there was hot kitniyot in that pot or any of the dishes, if you wait that time period, then it will be permitted. Rav Ovadia is the most lenient approach, and he says no, you can always eat, and there is no concern whatsoever. I'll just read here what he writes.
It's funny that he says that because he came down saying that Ashkenazi should not, in Israel, should not be eating kitniyot.
Okay.
As in their own.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he writes here, just if you go to the third paragraph, he writes it right, it's a long tshuva, but Bisikum, I just quoted his short summary. Mutar l'Ashkenazim hanoagim Isser. Be'orez v'kinyos b'Pesach l'isarech b'beis Sfardim. They're allowed to eat at Sephardic homes. Ve'edot hamizrach shenoagim heter be'orez v'kinyos b'Pesach. Ve'le'echol me'at havshilim hamugashim lifneihem. They can eat all the food put in front of them. Even if they know for sure that they cook, this host cooked rice and then took the rice out and then cooked something else, which is not Kitniyos. And he writes at the end, and I think this is, he quotes many other reasons, but then concludes it, right? The Torah is, is ways of, pleasant ways. And we're, I think ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to build unity. We're not trying to separate everybody on Pesach, so therefore, let's rely on these other cases, which, he quotes many halachic precedents to say that, especially because this isn't really, we don't believe it's aser. It's just a minhag, and in certain situations, but it's only a minhag, it's not really going to create a forbidden taste which will impact the food inside, and therefore, it should be permitted.
Ashkenazi shouldn't eat kitniyos, but he can eat.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go to their house and eat rice, but if they, if they cook potatoes in that same dish, you can for sure go ahead and eat those potatoes. I was reading people, and some people I know have the custom, I think on Pesach, they don't like to eat out because they don't, essentially they don't trust anybody else. I don't know. I don't, personally, that doesn't seem like an approach that I, Yom Tov is a time, one of the leniencies that we have on Yom Tov, to cook on Yom Tov, is that, maybe you're going to have guests that are come over and eat at them. If that's the whole leniency of Yom Tov, a time to get together, to start isolating yourself, that doesn't sit so well with me. So, the truth is, I don't know, certainly I think with people, I know that, I guess, again, with baby formula, I know very often people get different bottles, but maybe you can even make a distinction. In your own house, when you're bringing it in, maybe you'd say to get your own bottle, but maybe if you're invited out to somebody else's house, maybe you're not going to, say you can't, and maybe you would be more lenient and rely on the Kaf HaChaim or Rav Ovadia Yosef. I don't know if anybody would give. That would be something that I could see rabbis making that distinction. When bringing it to your own house, be more strict. Maybe if somebody's inviting you, perhaps you could be more lenient about those cases. Okay, so hopefully that's just some of the issues with Kitniyos. Maybe next week even, there's a lot more. Some of the bigger questions that we didn't touch on are the oil question, which we call derivatives of Kitniyot, and maybe there's leniencies that come along with that. Maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe talk about Matzah Shira next week. We'll talk about some other Pesach related issues as well. Okay, have a good week.